Hello, dwellers, and welcome to the basement and Happy New Year. As many of you may know by now, I'm pretty much am limping into 2017 as I try to get done many things that I had scheduled for this week, including this week's comic from the basement review, which is The Rogues, New Year's Evil #1 from DC Comics. So, which leads to the first obvious question for those of you who may not know, who are the Rogues? Well, they are basically the blue collar criminals of the DC universe that would rather just commit minor crimes, minor robberies, and such instead of taking over the world. Uh, the Rogues mostly consist of villains that are associated with the Flash, characters like Captain Cold, the Mirror Master, Top, Heatwave, Trickster, Weather Wizard, the Pied Piper, Golden Glider. As a matter of fact, if you've watched The Flash on the CW, many of these names are obviously familiar to you at this point in time after 3 seasons, plus Legends of Tomorrow and Arrow, and so on. Now, their first appearance as a team, the initial uh, Rogues Gallery, if you will, versus the Flash, was back in the Flash number 155, way back in September of 1965. Over the years, the team has seen many members come and go, and by the mid late 90s, particularly in the more modern era of the 2000s, uh, there's been a firm status quo established. There is a moral code associated with the Rogues in terms of a code of conduct between members, and when needed, depending on their best interest, of course, on the story, they have acted as heroes, anti-heroes, but heroes. So for those of you who ever wondered why Snart and Mick on Legends of Tomorrow always seem to walk that fine line between good and bad, and they will still end up doing the right thing, it's because these are traits that have been firmly placed within their characters over 40 years of the comics. Although in Mick's case, he's kind of a bit of a more of a screw loose in the comics for the most part. Now, this particular comic is in its own way a conclusion to a story arc that was done back in 1995. DC did this little crossover event called Underworld Unleash, in which Captain Boomerang, Captain Cold, Heatwave, Mirror Master, and Weather Wizard were offered a deal where they can get real magical powers instead of using their tech-based gear by another villain called Abracadabra, in order for who they're to unleash this demon called Neron on Earth, and basically tricking the five in the process. They are killed as they're told to do this one thing, and you can get unlimited power and respect and so forth. And granted, they were not told about the part where they will have to die. And basically, hell was unleashed on Earth for a bit, if I remember the storyline correctly. Neron was eventually stopped, and the rogues were eventually returned to Earth thanks to the Flash, I believe. Now, with that half-assed backstory out of the way as me trying to explain uh, a good 40 years of comic continuity in a short amount of time, let's talk about this week's comic, which actually has the tagline up at the very top of it from the pages of The Flash, for in case anyone wasn't aware of it, and the Rogues New Year's Evil #1, which is, as far as I could tell, is the first time the Rogues ever had their own comic book associated with them. I know over the course of the past 10 years that they've had some trade collections and things of that nature, but this will be the first time they had like their own separate solo title from the Flash. I could be wrong on that. Now, as far as the New Year's Evil tagline goes, back in 1998, DC did I guess it was called a fifth week event when 8 issues released throughout the year. I guess on the fifth week or months when there was like a fifth Wednesday or something or other, where they would have a story featuring one of the villains. It could be the Rogues, Darkseid, Gog, Prometheus, and a few others got special solo titles, and I think that fed into something that was leading into 1999. Although I that what that specifically was, I kind of forget. So I do apologize for that. Now, what's the story of this particular comic here? As you see some of the scans of the book flash by on the screen here, this particular issue takes place after the Three of a Kind storyline crossover between the Flash, Green Arrow, and Green Lantern. And this individual story itself is called Men and Gods. The comic sees Captain Cold, Mirror Master, Heatwave, Captain Boomerang, and Weather Wizard breaking into a temple of Mesta and some forgotten little kingdom land, what have you. And Heatwave is a bit reluctant because the status of their souls is still rather suspect, and but what they're doing there is that they're looking for a way to keep Neron off their back. But it turns out the reason why they're really there is all part of the trickster's plan to make sure a son of an old friend of his is kept safe with the help of the Pied Piper, while also um, making up for many of the bad things he's done by getting the souls of some of his associates free and clear. The rogues end up doing battle against Harun and Neron directly, and thanks to the trickster's plans rather working out, involving the young boy being able to summon a giant spiritual guardian of somewhat that can throw down with Neron. Uh, the trickster's plans work. The rogues get basically are freed and clear from Neron's influence, and the this temple that Neron was interested in is also going to be left alone, with the trickster just making sure that next that he himself will be Neron's next big target, because he basically pwned him, if you will, by just being able to uh, 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 to play to Neron's natural weakness, as he's a demon that always likes to work with the deal, like the devil is in the details, if you will. So it's a fun little story. So that brings me to the verdict. The artwork in and of itself is totally fine. The story flows nicely with just enough backstory and details given throughout it, so that anyone who would just grab this issue at totally random, which I admit I kind of did, without really knowing all the circumstances behind it, is able to get caught up. The trickster being established as shown as being somewhat on the side of justice at the time, because he kind of had a loose affiliation with the FBI, and the nice ending with the Heat Wave deciding that he's going to stay behind, break away from the team for a bit, and study a monk because of all the stuff he's seen over the course of the past several years leading up to this comic, goes to show some nice some character development and character growth. Let me see if there's anything else in notes that I left here. Oh yeah, it's yeah, forgot my thing here. That it's a light, easy read, and wraps up details of a storyline that started several years prior. So this was basically the end of a story that I ended up reading. Anyway, so coming up next time in the basement, hopefully on its normal day of Thursday, the next comic book will be, we'll go back to Tank Girl and wrap up our look at the karaoke three-parter. It will be Tank Girl karaoke number 3. That hopefully will be up on Thursday of this week, without me having to end up back in the hospital again. So, fingers crossed. So, coming up in the basement between now and then, I'm going to attempt to do uh, the Black Mirror, watch the episode recap, review things throughout today as we count down to 2017. So I got 4 episodes, which it should be doable. And then if I time it right, we'll wrap up 2016 with the Treks and Voyages, Star Trek Voyager episode 1159, a discussion about that. Hopefully, that'll be put up right before midnight. So that's my plans for today, my friends. And of course, you know you are my friends. So till later on, have yourselves a great New Year's Eve.